Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. Recently, I did an hour and a half to 40-minute long interview with a Ukrainian in the city of Kharkiv. This was right after the successful Ukrainian counteroffensive, pushing the Russians out of the oblast. And so it's a really interesting interview, but a lot of the clips of it and a lot of the portions of it I can't really use for the wider, bigger projects I'm working on, covering how this person actually lost their father to a Russian artillery strike. They were murdered by the Russian army, and interviews about homosexuality in Ukraine as they are queer Ukrainian. And so this was actually a section of the interview that I can't use for any of the other projects, but it actually talks about the Euromaidan protest movement, the Euromaidan revolution, the revolution of dignity, which doesn't get a lot of coverage in the West outside of the usual conspiracy theories about it. And so I wanted to show you guys this interview with somebody who was there, who actually quit going to school to become a full-time revolutionary in the city of Kharkiv, who actually saw people get murdered by pro-Russian protesters and paid Russian thugs who brutalized protesters in the city of Kharkiv who were allied with the mayor and the local police force. But they kept on pushing through it until they eventually had the revolution of dignity, which they're currently defending in Ukraine. Now, everything she says, as I've said before, in this interview is not necessarily reflective of my beliefs. The reason I do these interviews is so we can have the opinions of the people who are most directly affected by the war, have a permanent record of it, have a historical record of it that people can look back upon 100 years from now, so people can remember on this day, at this time, this is what a lot of Ukrainians thought about the war at this stage of it. So I hope you guys enjoy the conversation. This one was a goodie in my opinion. I really like this one. And also remember to subscribe and support the Patreon if you can, so we can do more interviews like this in the future. Enjoy. So you were growing up, you were coming of age, and then eventually in 2014, Maidan happened, Euromaidan.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big moment in Ukrainian history.
True.
Did you participate in those protests?
Yes. So I was 19 when the revolution happened, and turned 20 when it's ended.
A lot of people might not know what that is, what this protest we're talking about is. Can you explain what it is?
So what happened is this was the biggest revolution in Europe in 21st century. And I participated in pretty much in it every day. So the entire winter of the revolution, we call it winter that changed us is the name. We also called it Revolution of Dignity, which it was the best name for it actually. People call it Euromaidan in the West all the time. We kind of use that name, but it's much more about dignity and democracy and fight against tyranny than it was about Euro integration, to be quite honest with you. So it started as our president at the time, Yanukovich, was very Russia affiliated, Russian puppet, if you will, and he wanted to be this would-be tyrant. So he wanted pretty much to turn Ukraine into some sort of a Belarus place. So Belarus has a authoritarian. Lukashenko is their authoritarian leader. He wanted to be this sort of stuff. So he did it kind of like soft moves to reduce our freedom of speech, human rights, prohibit any attempts at protesting. So we wanted at the time, most of Ukrainians, more than 60%, wanted to be part of European Union. So make strides to become part of European Union. And he executively decided that it's not gonna happen. So we're gonna be affiliated with Russia, basically. So students in Kyiv went to protest that because they felt like it was non-democratic, since most people in Ukraine wanted to move Western and be more affiliated with Western countries, specifically European Union. So they went out to pretty much protest, and he ordered them to be beaten up to a pulp. So people saw that, those students my age at the time, so 19, 20-year-olds, get them beaten up just for expressing their frustration with the course that the country was going forward to. And people saw that as a great injustice, that you cannot protest, you cannot express your will as people. Ukrainians would not stand for that because we're not sheep like Russians are. And we went massive waves of people on the next day went to the streets in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, in Lviv, in all sorts of places. to protest basically this injustice and to express our will that we will not put up with tyranny like that, put up with that sort of president who thinks he's so better than everyone else and can just beat people up for expressing their will. So that's how the revolution pretty much started. And it continued in winter and in spring, and until we pretty much removed this tyrant from power. And our goal was to be a democracy and to have free speech and the will of the people to be respected.
If I understand correctly, he also passed a lot of laws around protesting.
Yeah.
Did you talk about those?
Yeah, so pretty much the laws, you can find them pretty easily in like Wikipedia and stuff, but it's the prohibition of gatherings, so more than 5 or 7 people, I think was the rule, cannot gather. So pretty much every protester can be like legally taken by police and just removed from the streets. So kind of similar like it is in Russia. So he was making moves to make us much more like Russia than what we actually wanted, which was to be a Western-like country.
So he was trying to make it so it would be basically impossible to protest.
Yeah.
And unless with his explicit permission.
Yeah, which he would never give for anyone that disagrees with him. So no protests basically is what he was trying to do.
So you participated in the protest movement in Kharkiv. Most of the coverage was, of course, in Kyiv.
Yeah.
What was the main differences between the protests in Kharkiv, which is more in eastern Ukraine, a lot more Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine, where there's much more people that speak Russian, compared to Kyiv?
Well, to be honest, many people just moved to Kyiv from all sorts of places to be part of the revolution. So there are many people from Kharkiv there as well. But in Kyiv, there was like this much more numbers, of course, because Kyiv is a large city and 4 million population, and many people came from all over like the Ukraine to participate there. And there were a lot of, as you know, state violence against people. There were like, it began like just beating people up, and then snipers and shit, so all sorts of stuff. Many people died, which we called like Nebesna Sotnya, which is like Heavenly 100. It's like people who died during the protest in Kyiv. But in Kharkiv it was pretty hard as well, in sense that our police was against us, and they beaten us up regularly, and it was very also kind of like depressing in a way, because we thought that most of the Kharkiv would not support us. So we thought that, like you said, it was Russian-speaking city, it would be more affiliated with Russia. But as it happened, quite every day the number of people would grow who would go to the Maidan. So like 500 at the beginning, then maybe 1,000, then 3,000, then 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 60,000, you know, like, so it grew. And you could saw like the people being less afraid to show their support to Kyiv and to Maidan and to pro-Ukrainian, pro-European movement in Ukraine against tyranny and authoritarianism and Russia as well. So this was a bit different in a way, because we never thought it would be as big in Kharkiv as it was, what I'm saying. So like I participated in gentle removal of a Lenin monument, which was like the biggest monument to Lenin in Ukraine actually. So it was pretty big statue, I'd say. So we removed it, like physically.
Can you describe that experience?
Yeah, so this was the day. We were very afraid that they will try to pull some shit like they did in Donbass and Luhansk, which is like DNR, LNR, separatist movements that were sponsored and militarized by Russia, basically. So yeah, we were afraid they will try to do this in Kharkiv to make this separatist thing happen, and so we went to.
So you mean like the seizing of government offices with
guns
and rounding up
so
the
we
opposition?
Were like, we were very afraid that we will be this part of basically become part of Russia, or this unrecognizable by anyone, like sort of whatever the NER and LNR is. So we made a point to go in large numbers and protest against this. Our mayor was very kind of pro-Russian at the time, compromised, I'd say. So he was going to he was going to go to Russia to basically, I think, like talk about this thing, how possible it is to make it happen here with Russians. So you should as well understand that pretty much all of Yanukovych administration was in the pocket of Russia, so affiliated with Russia, going to Russia all the time. Siren. So they would like ask permission basically about anything to Putin and his administration. So all moves were made with their blessing, I'd say. So yeah, so what we did was we woken up, me and my sister and my friends, and
If we could stop for a second.
Yeah.
Sirens just started blaring. How often does this happen? Let me just open the window for a second so it'll be easier to hear. How often does this happen in Kharkiv?
Well, not as often now, and because of our counteroffensive progress, we liberated occupied areas in Kharkivska Oblast pretty effectively. So they were shelling Kharkiv mainly with artillery from occupied areas. So now they are moved back to, Donbass and Russia and stuff, and they do not shell us as much. So most attacks are now missiles from Belgorod, which is Russian city close to Kharkiv. And when I was here in March, this would be all day, every day. And then when I came back here in June, it was again like this all day, 3 to 7 strikes per day. So artillery and rockets.
Can you what is this meant to indicate for the civilian population?
This means to indicate that you should hide somewhere, basically. Go to the basement if you can, or at least go to the corridor behind 2 walls. So 2 walls should separate you from the potential strike area. So yeah, so glass would not kill you, and shrapnel would not kill you. It still can kill you, obviously, but you'd be more safe that way. So this is actually a warning to move away from the windows, which we should do, but doing an interview instead. So
Yeah, to be clear, we are literally right next to the window,
so
not the best place to be.
Yeah.
So can you talk about, like, a lot of times, like, I've heard explosion, like I think it was last night, there was 2 big explosions.
Yep.
We go into the corridor, both of
Yep.
us, and then the sirens start.
Yeah, so this is due to proximity. So we are very close to Russia in Kharkiv, unfortunately. Orkistan is like...
Orkistan.
Yeah, this close to us. So
What do you mean by Orkistan?
It's the land of the orcs, So we here in Ukraine love our Tolkien. So we like...
J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah, so we love Lord of the Rings. It's our shit. We watch it, we like it. So maybe it's very relatable to us to fighting against this large force that tries to destroy everything good we have built. I think this is what we find relatable. Has nothing to do with like ethnicity or something like that. It's because orcs are this power, like in Tolkien world, that just come and destroy everything. So they like burn cities, burn villages, kill people with no reason, with no point in anything. It's just they destroy things, which is how we see Russians basically. So they come and they ruin our lives. So yeah, so we call them orcs and call them the Russia Orkistan.
Can you sleep through these sirens? Do you have the ability to do so? Because I am, when I pass out, I'm passed out. So do you have the ability to do that? Do you often sleep through the sirens?
I really want to comment on your sleeping abilities. But
do you want to?
Dylan Burns can sleep through anything, honestly. There was large explosion a couple days ago, I think it was yesterday. No, not yesterday, a day before yesterday, I think. And it was very close. It was like 4 kilometers away from us, basically.
Well, what does that mean for a Yankee?
Oh, fuck. I'm not sure.
Like 2 miles or something.
Maybe like 2-3 miles, basically.
Yeah.
Maybe. I'm not sure. Like, you people are weird. So, your measurements are weird, I should say. So, basically, he was sleeping. I came to the room and I was like, Dylan, wake up. And he was like, oh. So we went to the corridor and I asked him to go there so he would be safe, basically. I don't want anything bad to happen to my American friend, So he can sleep through anything. I think if they did nuclear strike, he would still be asleep. No problem.
True.
Yeah.
If I don't see it, if I don't open my eyes, it didn't happen.
But we are more cautious, I guess. If you have been under plane bombings, under constant shelling, you take sirens more seriously than people do, I'd say, in Lviv or Kyiv or maybe Poltava. Well, basically any town that was not as heavily damaged as Kharkiv has been. So if you are in Nikolaev or Kharkiv, then you take this stuff seriously.
So you can't sleep through them?
Well, you can. Some people do that. They're just very tired every night. So people in Kharkiv has like this big of a bags under their eyes because they haven't slept.
So can you sleep through them or can you not?
No, not really. No.
No.
Mm-hmm. So like half a year without a sleep is what I'm saying.
I've felt this, and a lot of other people have felt this as well who live in Ukraine. Have you gotten used to these types of sounds, to the sound of, the thud of artillery in the distance, or the sound of the sirens?
Yeah, in a way you get used to it in a way that you don't get like, oh my god, every time. Like, so it's your psyche would just lose your mind if you like constantly like afraid, like, or a missile will hit me right now. It's not a way to. You can't live like that, basically, is what I'm saying. So you kind of start seeing it as a background noise, but at the same time, you still need to take measures to be safe as possible, I guess.
So you were describing before how you guys took down the Lenin statue during the protests.
So Maidan, we went to prevent HNR from happening, which is like Kharkiv's like national republic or some shit they make up. So we went there and we basically, I remember waking up and thinking just, please people, just come through. I was afraid there would be like a couple thousand of people and that's it. And I really was afraid that this would happen to Kharkiv. I couldn't imagine anything worse than being part of Russia, honestly. So I just was hoping that they will come through. People in Kharkiv will just be there this time around. And then I called a taxi in the morning and I just went there to the place of gathering we agreed upon. And there was like so many people, like 60,000 people, they say. So I was like... yeah, so then we protested with this big number of people. Is good to, revolution business stuff. So our mayor pretty much ran out of the building. He was scared shitless. We showed them basically that Kharkiv will not stand to this shit. So we are Ukraine and we will remain Ukraine, is what we said.
And you guys tore down the statue.
We went from that place to the city center, which is the Square of Freedom, which is the biggest square in Europe, by the way. And we went there and we decided now is the prime time. Oh, also Yanukovich ran from Kyiv that exact same day. So it was like a big celebration moment. Victory of Maidan, if you will. So this we decided to celebrate with removing the symbol of Soviet Union and oppression Ukrainian faced. Because of it, we decided to just remove them with our hands, basically. So people like used ropes to just pull the statue. It took like 10 hours to do. And the sweetest sound of Lenin falling down, hard to describe.
I remember you told me about this before. Somebody got hurt though.
Yeah. So the rope was torn apart and a piece of it hit a dude in the eye. So he lost his eye. But that's, yeah.
Did you see any violence in Kharkiv during this period of protest?
Of course, I saw people get killed by pro-Russian side and Russians. And so gun violence, like getting beat up. Maidan protesters would get beat up, caught in the streets, beat up with bats and, stuff like that.
So you said that you saw people die during the protest movement.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that? Could you describe what happened?
So the thing that will happen, we would have like Maidan and anti-Maidan, which would be like, Maidan would be like pro-Euro integration, pro-democracy, pro-Ukraine basically, which sounds stupid, you in Ukraine, what means pro-Ukrainian, but that shows you the situation. Anti-Maidan would be like very pro-Russian, very anti-everything we were standing for, so most of them were actually...
Anti-EU, you would say.
Yeah. So they are pro-Russian. So what they would do...
Could I ask just quickly, I was looking at a lot of this footage, I would see a lot of Soviet symbolism from the anti-Maidan people, from the dignity, revolution of dignity.
Yeah.
Would you say that these were like communists, or would you say these are people who were? Well, how would you describe them ideologically?
To be quite honest, they just have shit in their heads. They're not like communists in the sense that Soviet Union was. Russia is not communist at the moment, honestly. So it's like oligarchy with mafia state, basically. So it's not like it has an aesthetic of communism, I'd say. So they would use like symbols from Soviet Union times. They would like can I say that? Jerk off to that.
They jerk off.
Yeah, they jerk off to that glory of the Soviet days, basically, is what they do.
So would you say it's like for the past to not really...
Yeah. So they would like affiliate themselves with that time. It's not like all of them like wanted to be like straight up back to Soviet Union times, but it is kind of like a dream of Putin to create some sort of like new Soviet Union, basically. So like to pretty much all the countries that were in Soviet Union to make something as similar to Soviet Union again. He also called Soviet Union, dissolvement of Soviet Union, the biggest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century. So no like, Holocaust and shit. So not like a World War II, but the dissolvement of Soviet Union, which is a Dugin point he makes all the time. So, it's like he's like a man behind the scenes of the Russian ideology, basically. So what would happen that this anti-Maidan people, they would ship them from Belgorod. We saw them in the buses. There's footage of that, proof of that, if you want to look it up. So
when you say they ship them, Belgorod is a part of Russia.
Yeah. So Russian city Belgorod, they would just bring them in a bus and just drop them off in anti-Maidan place, which was the square where Lenin was standing, basically, and in front of a like administration building or something like that, give them money, not much, like 100 hryvnias, 200 hryvnias, which is like buy yourself some vodka, So this level of like investment.
You said they would pay them to protest, you're saying?
Yeah. So you could see like that, like them just shipped, and we could tell they were Russians very easily. They would pretend that these people were from Kharkiv. So they would pretend these were Kharkiv citizens who were like pro-Russian, basically. But actually most of them were from Belgorod. And they would bring their news, Russia Today, stuff like that. So media from Russia, state media from Russia, and they would film them as Ukrainian protesters, but in fact they were like Russians, paid to be there, basically. So this would be turned to violence a lot of the time. So they would seek us out and just beat us up or shoot at us with guns and use like gas that makes you cry and stuff. So
tear gas.
Yeah, tear gas. And so I saw them kill people as well. I saw them kill two guys with a knife. They just a man from this anti-Maidan stuff from Belgorod, he just gave these two young people pretty severe knife wounds, and they died. So
they walked up to
attacked them. Yes.
Yeah, and like stabbed them.
Yes.
In the chest. Was it in the stomach?
Stomach mostly, like.
Stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
we couldn't get to them. They were blocked. So they were just watching them bleed to death.
So you guys watched them bleed to death?
Yes. That was a bad day.
Was that type of violence common? Yeah.
This level, like people die, and this did not happen every day, like every other day maybe. But there was this organization called Titushki, which is like gopniki. I don't know if you know what that is. Which is like, it's like a gang like kind of culture that these people would be like, there was this sports club called Aplod. So they were like basically like very far right Nazis would go there, skinheads we call them, and people who had like criminal records and shit, they would go to this club and just grow muscles there, basically alpha macho shit. So they would be there, and our mayor used them actually to beat us up, to pretty much scared the protesters away.
So you're talking about like Nazis and like these like kind of like far right types.
Not all of them, but some of them. Most of them were just, like thuggish kind of like culture.
There's a lot of reporting on like far right types on Ukraine's side. Like people talk about Svoboda, people talk about Right Sector, people talk about Azov, people talk about these types. How prevalent were they during those times? And you were talking about them on the other side. Were they prevalent on the other side as well, the far right?
Yeah, of course, obviously. Russia is like quite a lot of that. So fascist types, Nazi types. And on our side, there were a lot of people with disagreements on Maidan, I say that. So this is something I actually kind of don't understand in America. People, like, you will like shit on your own side all the time and people disagree with you like 5-10% and you say they're not good enough to be in our company. This is the luxury you cannot allow yourself when you are under threat, such as we are. When your country is under threat, when your country is identity as Ukrainian, your language, your freedoms, your democracy is at stake. Now it's war, of course, but at the time it was also very dangerous for us as a country to lose ourselves basically to Russia. And we cannot afford to say like, oh, you think we should go to Europe? And the person would be like, no, we should be independent, like nationalist type, And we were like, well, you're not good enough to defend our cause. This is a luxury you can afford when you're sitting on your chair in your like luxury apartment somewhere in LA. But this is not a luxury you can afford when you are under this type of threat. So we would make peace with people we disagreed with. So like very like, not Nazis of course, but like very nationalist types, very far right types. They're not my jam. But I would I wouldn't want them as friends and to have like tea parties with them or like drink with them or something like. But and they wouldn't want it with me, to be fair. But we had this idea that Ukraine is more important, that pretty much preserving our country as independence, our rights of to govern ourselves, our right to self-determination, our freedoms as people and freedom of speech, human rights is more important to me than saying this person is not good enough. So there were far-right people, of course, but most of them were just like 8 million people took part in Maidan just in Kyiv. Mm-hmm. So you can probably imagine there are like all sorts of people there.
Of the percentage of the people you saw, how much of it would you say was the far right? Either on your side or Russia's side?
Well, I wouldn't make judgments like that because I just can't statistically pull a number on that. Mm-hmm. But many people who make speeches and stuff, some of them on our side was very, very like progressive, kind of lefty stuff. Some of them were like very liberal. Most of them like wanted kind of a liberal basically government here. Like
would you align yourself with those types, the liberal types, the progressive types?
Yeah, I'd say so. Green hair and shit. I'm joking. I'm like very in this country I'm like super deep. Like I would be like the progressive here. So very pro women's rights, LGBT rights. I really want my country to improve on that front. Like LGBT people face quite bad discrimination here, so I would prefer it to be better. I am part of LGBT myself, so it's important to me, of course, but I would still ally with people who do not agree with that, who have traditional values, the type conservative or very religious people, because that's what you do when you want to preserve your country. You don't pick and choose. Many people who defended us with their bodies, actually, we call them ultras, which is football hooligan. Yeah. They protected us from police all the time. So police would just do this. We saw it. Me and my sister saw it. So a pro-Russian would, anti-Maidan person would run with a gun towards us. And we would point to the police that was supposed to protect us. We would say this person has a gun, and he will take a gun from them, and they just give the gun back right in front of us. Back to this person.
Back to the person. Take a loaded gun, and they give it back.
Yeah, so me and my sister were not in front of our salad. Basically, why? How can you do that straight in front of us? But they were aligned. Police at the time was aligned with the pro-Russia side.
Well, does that mean that the police was also very violent towards you guys as well?
Yeah, sometimes. But they mostly pretended that they impartial. So they would stand, do nothing basically, let pro-Russian guys beat us up. Basically is what they did. But also there were like force structures like Berkut, which you probably heard about in Kyiv, who were used to kill protesters, beat up protesters. We had similar stuff here in Kharkiv, which was called Grifon, which is very similar to Berkut. They would just beat us up as well.